Becoming more and doing less. Terry Hershey, in his book, The Power of Pause, says, I pause to be surprised, to let the cares of my day be carried away, and to give myself time for my soul to catch up with my body. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. We live in a world that urges us to admire and go after whatever is bigger, better, and faster. The underlying idea of this is telling us that we should be living a life differently than what we are. Now, do any of you feel that pressure or that type of thing in your life? Well, if you do, the power of pause will resonate with you. Terry Hershey says in his book, The Power of Pause, that there are two different pauses. There's one, the active pause, and that is where that you are present in your life right now. You're in charge, you take charge of your life and your surroundings. With that, you can take a deep pause, breath. Passive pause is when you have to stop and relax and blow out. Why is this called the power of pause, Terry says? Because our awareness and choices in life really make a big difference. I'd like to tell you about a little girl. In 1930, Jillian, in 1930, a little girl, Jillian, was labeled difficult. Her teachers thought she had a learning disability. Now, ADHD was not a diagnosis at the time. And her teachers and her parents were very concerned about her. One day a counselor called up the parent and said, I want to have a conference with you. So Julie and the parents went into the counselor's office. Julian sat in a chair and she put her hands underneath her and she tried ever so hard to be still. And she had this really sad look on her face. Well, after the conference, the counselor said, Julian, your mom and dad and I are going to go outside and talk privately. So when they went outside, the counselor went over and he turned on the radio. And this melodious music just filled the room. Outside the door, the counselor wanted to be really quiet. Let's pause, take a breath. They looked back in, and no longer was Jillian sitting in that chair. She was up and she was around the room and she had this blissful look on her face and she was so happy. And he looked at the parents and he said, your child doesn't have any mental issues. She's a dancer. So that pause, that breath and pause where they could look in and see their child for who she really was and not have their fears of what she was not, really changed that little girl's life. Now, it could have gone a different way. Jillian could have been labeled and medicated. Problem solved. But she went on, her parents nurtured her, cared for her, encouraged her, And she became the greatest choreographer of her time. The famous Gillian Lynn. Now, I was researching for this speech tonight, and I also read some stories from Herman Hesse. And I just loved him. He also believes in the power of pause. And he says, in one of his books, he told a story about the traveler. And here's this traveler walking down the street, and he's got this great big bag on his shoulder. And he's walking. And a passerby walked by. Whoa, wait a minute. Hey, traveler, what do you have on your back? And the traveler says, oh, it is so heavy. And the passerby said, I know, it looks heavy. You said it was heavy. But what's in your bag? Why don't you sit it down? And he says, oh, I can't. He said, it's my mother. And the passerby says, well, why don't you set your mother down? Why do you keep carrying her? And he said, because I've always carried her. Now really, what he had in his bag is not probably that interesting to us. But have you ever thought of that? Do you carry a bag, a sack? And in that sack, it could be the anxieties of the day, your preoccupation with busyness, controlling issues, grudges, or even, woundedness. So what I urge you to do during the day is to put down that bag and breathe and feel the power. Mr. Toastmaster.